Chapter 1 Beginnings of a Promise. The autumn air was crisp as Jonathan Reeves first caught sight of Isabella Moreau beneath the golden canopy of an ancient oak in Central Park. It was one of those serendipitous moments, a meeting that would spark an emotional journey full of promise, passion, and peril. Jonathan, a dedicated but modest architect, had always believed in the quiet dignity of everyday life. Isabella, a spirited art curator with dreams as vivid as her paintings, exuded an energy that resonated with the deepest corners of his soul. Their initial conversation was gentle, almost tentative, as if they were both testing the waters of an uncharted emotional landscape. Jonathan found himself captivated by Isabella's soft laughter, the way her eyes danced with an inner light, and a subtle hint of melancholy that suggested she too had known loss. They spoke of dreams deferred, of the ephemeral nature of beauty, and of a future where creativity and stability might intersect harmoniously. In that moment, a promise was born, a promise to embrace life in all its uncertainties, to trust their hearts despite a world steeped in doubts. Over the weeks that followed, their meetings grew more frequent. Strolling along tree-lined avenues, sipping hot coffee at corner cafes, and wandering through art galleries, they began to learn not only about each other, but about themselves. Jonathan, who had once cloistered himself in blueprints and sketches, felt that his creative spirit was awakening. Isabella, meanwhile, found solace in Jonathan's unwavering steadiness, a grounding presence amidst the chaos of her own aspirations. Their love was slow burning, filled with whispered confidences and shared vulnerabilities. It was, as Jonathan would later reflect, the purest kind of connection he had ever known. Chapter 2 A Glimpse of Light in the Shadows. In the midst of this burgeoning romance, Jonathan's longtime friend Marcus Cross re-entered his life. Marcus was everything Jonathan was not: charismatic, daring, and flamboyant. Their friendship, forged in the fires of youth and tempered over the years by shared experiences, had always been unbreakable. Yet Marcus carried ambitions that bordered on recklessness, a hunger for success that often led him to flirt with danger. Marcus's return brought with it stories of high-stakes investments, thrilling adventures in far-flung cities, and opportunities that promised instant riches. At first, Jonathan welcomed his friend's vivacity, intrigued by the idea of stepping outside his well-ordered world. Marcus, too, was enraptured by Isabella's grace, though his attention was fleeting, a spark of interest that might have been hidden beneath layers of casual flirtation. Nevertheless, Isabella appreciated his humor and adventurous spirit, admiring the way he seemed to live life without regrets. One chilly December evening, as the city lights shimmered on snow-dusted streets, Jonathan and Marcus found themselves deep in conversation over drinks at a bustling downtown bar. Marcus painted a picture of an opportunity that could revolutionize Jonathan's career, a joint architectural project blending art and innovation in a newly developing district. Jonathan hesitated, torn between loyalty to his measured, honest practices and the seductive allure of a venture that promised both risk and reward. In that moment, the bonds of trust began to strain, setting the stage for events that would forever alter the course of his life. Chapter 3 Crumbling Foundations. As spring emerged after a long, harsh winter, Jonathan threw himself into the project. Days blurred into nights as he and Marcus worked side by side, drafting plans and negotiating with investors. Isabella watched, both proud and anxious, as the project took on a life of its own. It was meant to be a masterpiece, a melding of art and structure that would redefine the cityscape and, more importantly, symbolized the synthesis of passion and practicality that Jonathan embodied. Yet, as progress accelerated, so did the pace of unseen currents. Rumors whispered through the corridors of power. Marcus was securing secret meetings, forging alliances with influential figures, and slowly shifting the project's goals towards greater profit rather than artistic integrity. Jonathan's initial excitement gave way to a growing unease. Late one night, while poring over blueprints in his dimly lit studio, he discovered discrepancies in the financial ledgers. Furtive transfers, unexplained expenditures, the numbers didn't add up. His heart pounded as the realization dawned. Marcus was siphoning resources meant for the communal vision, diverting funds to projects that served his own burgeoning empire. Confronting Marcus was excruciating. Their meeting, once filled with warm reminiscences, turned bitter. Marcus, once a friend, offered only cold justifications. "You're too naive, Jonathan," he sneered. "This isn't about dreams, it's about survival and success. If you want to make a mark in this world, you must be willing to sacrifice sentiment for profit." His words struck Jonathan like a blow, shattering the idealism he had clung to so desperately. The betrayal cut deeply, not merely a financial misstep, but a fundamental fracturing of trust. Isabella, caught in the crossfire, pleaded with Jonathan to find balance. "Sometimes the world isn't black and white," she whispered, "but you must not let dishonor tarnish the beauty you create. Find a way to reclaim your vision." Her eyes, filled with both sorrow and determination, became his silent beacon amid the chaos. Chapter 4: Descent into Darkness. With his world collapsing around him, Jonathan retreated into solitude. Nights turned cold and long as doubt and despair gnawed at his resolve. The once vibrant sketches that filled his studio were now shrouded in shadows, the bold lines of his imagination rendered impotent by betrayal. The project, a testament to his passion for merging art and architecture, now lay in ruins, a monument to broken promises and discarded integrity. Haunted by sleepless nights, Jonathan wandered the labyrinthine streets of the city, seeking solace in the anonymity of its midnight crowds. Every face he passed seemed to mirror fragments of his own shattered dream. The betrayal of his closest friend and the disillusionment of the very ideals he held dear weighed heavily on him. In a moment of despair, he considered abandoning architecture altogether, as if his gift for creation had been irrevocably tainted by the ugliness of greed and deceit. It was during one of these forlorn wanderings that he encountered Margaret, a quiet, perceptive woman who worked at a small, independent bookstore tucked away from the urban sprawl. Margaret had a way of seeing straight into one's soul. Her and empathetic eyes offered a rare kind of understanding that no grand gesture ever could. Over cups of mint tea in the back room of the shop, Margaret listened to Jonathan's laments, urging him not to surrender entirely to the darkness. "Every great work," she remarked softly, "carries within it the scars of its creation. Your pain is not a weakness. It is the raw material from which true art is forged." Margaret's words resonated deeply. In their quiet conversations, Jonathan began to find fragments of hope. He realized that although the betrayal had shattered his former self, it also laid bare his vulnerabilities and, paradoxically, his potential for rebirth. Slowly he started sketching again, not grand blueprints for monumental buildings, but tender, raw expressions of his inner turmoil and fragile hope. Each stroke of his pencil became a catharsis, a form of self-forgiveness that paved the way for renewal. Yet the path to redemption was neither swift nor certain. The ghosts of the past, particularly Marcus's treachery, continued to haunt him. Every new line he drew was a quiet rebellion against the forces that sought to corrupt his soul. And in this battle of creation versus despair, Jonathan gradually began to rediscover the silent poetry of his own heart. Chapter 5: Rebirth from Ruins. Months passed, winter melted into spring, and with the changing seasons came a metamorphosis not only in nature, but within Jonathan himself. He embarked on a solitary journey, a pilgrimage of self-discovery that led him away from the city's neon glare to the tranquil expanses of the countryside. There, amid rolling fields and whispering forests, he immersed himself in reflection and creation. The towering, oppressive structures of his past life were replaced by the gentle cadence of nature, each day a quiet hymn of renewal. In this secluded retreat, Jonathan began to compile his scattered sketches and fragmented memories into a single, unified vision. The work was laborious and heart-wrenching. Every page told a story of lost innocence, of love betrayed, of dreams forsaken, but also of hard-won wisdom and the resilience of the human spirit. He wrote about Isabella, whose love had once been his guiding star, even as their paths diverged. He penned the bitter lessons learned from Marcus's treachery and the bittersweet beauty of failure, the kind that forces one to rebuild from the rubble. This chronicle, which he titled Echoes of the Fallen Heart, was more than a memoir. It was an ode to the transformative power of pain. In rediscovering himself, Jonathan realized that greatness is not defined by unblemished victories, but by the courage to rise after every fall. His narrative interwove moments of exquisite tenderness, a recollection of Isabella's gentle smile in the golden light of evening, with the raw, unvarnished agony of betrayal. It was a tapestry of contradictions, where love and loss coexisted in a delicate, ever-shifting balance. The process of writing proved to be profoundly healing. Jonathan shared his drafts with Margaret, whose quiet encouragement and honest critiques helped him refine his voice until it resonated with authenticity. Slowly, the manuscript grew, chapter by chapter, memory by memory, until it spanned the breadth of his life's most intense experience. When the manuscript was finally complete, Jonathan felt a stirring of both trepidation and hope. The pages captured the full spectrum of his journey, each word imbued with the passion of a soul reborn. For the first time in years, he sensed that his pain had a purpose: to serve as a beacon for others who had lost their way in the labyrinth of love and ambition. And so, with a trembling heart and steady resolve, he prepared to share his story with the world. Chapter 6: Echoes on the Air. The day of the launch was filled with a mix of anxiety and quiet exhilaration. Jonathan had arranged a modest public reading at the local community center, a space filled with eager faces and attentive hearts. The event was not a grand spectacle, but rather an intimate gathering of souls, united by a shared hunger for truth and redemption. As he stepped onto the small stage, he felt the weight of his past and the promise of a future yet unwritten. With a deep breath, Jonathan began to speak, and as he read, the room transformed into a sanctuary of empathy and understanding. His voice, steady yet tinged with emotion, carried the echoes of every heartbreak and every small victory. Listeners were captivated by the raw vulnerability of his words, the way he navigated the treacherous terrain of love and betrayal, and yet emerged with a quiet dignity that belied the turmoil. Among the crowd sat individuals whose eyes glistened with tears of recognition. Some had known similar struggles, others were inspired by the sheer force of Jonathan's resilience. In that moment, the power of storytelling transcended the boundaries of language and culture, forging a connection that was both intimate and universal. For many, Echoes of the Fallen Heart was not merely a memoir, it was a lifeline, a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. As the reading drew to a close, Jonathan felt a palpable shift within himself. The scars of betrayal and the weight of lost dreams had transformed into sources of light, a beacon that illuminated not only his own path, but also the journey of everyone present. The applause that followed was not just a celebration of his words, but an affirmation of the shared human experience, a quiet vow that even in our darkest moments, hope endures. Epilogue, A New Horizon. In the months that followed the public reading, Jonathan's story began to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the confines of his small community. Requests for interviews, invitations to literary gatherings, and heartfelt letters from strangers all affirmed that his painful journey had sparked something luminous in others. Isabella, too, reached out after years of silence, conveying that her own path toward redemption had been inspired by his courage. Although the wounds of the past could never be entirely healed, their mutual acknowledgement offered a bittersweet closure, a final chapter where forgiveness and growth walked hand in hand. Marcus, whose ambition once blinded him to the sanctity of genuine connection, disappeared from the public eye. His legacy, a cautionary tale of succumbing to greed and arrogance, served as a reminder that success, built on betrayal, is as ephemeral as a shadow at twilight. Meanwhile, Jonathan, emboldened by his experience, embarked on new projects that blended art with architecture, each creation a living tribute to the resilience of hope. His designs were infused with the tender imperfections of a heart that had loved deeply and lost fiercely, a testament to the beauty of vulnerability. Echoes of the Fallen Heart ultimately became more than a memoir or a narrative. It evolved into a symbol of renewal. In sharing his truth, Jonathan demonstrated that the journey from despair to triumph is paved with the fragments of shattered dreams, each piece carrying within it the potential to illuminate a brighter future. And as he continued to write, design, and inspire, he carried the echoes of his fallen heart into every new creation, forever transforming his pain into a masterpiece of life.